Hello, I'm Scott Davis and welcome to New World Birth. This is the weekly neutrino forecast for March 30th to April 5th of 2014. Human design is the synthesis of four ancient wisdom systems as a bridge to understanding our potential to discover our path and making decisions that are correct for us as individuals. And those traditions are astrology, the I Ching, the Hindu Brahmin chakra system, and the Kabbalistic tree of life. So we're going to look at how these systems work together in human design. First, we start by looking at the position of the sun and the moon, the planets, the nodes in the wheel, just like we would if we were looking at it from an astrological point of view, except instead of mapping them to zodiological constellations or looking at them in comparison to each other by the angles that they make, we look at them in relative to these hexagrams of the I Ching that are around the outside of the wheel, and those are mapped to specific locations inside the body graph here. And on March 30th, we have the sun. It's in Aries, but it's also in the 17th hexagram, which is denoted here, numbered from bottom to top. We have Yang, Yin, Yin, Yang, Yang, and Yin on the roof. So anyway, these shapes inside the body graph are called centers, and they represent the next stage in our evolution as humans, from having 7 chakras up until 1781 to now operating as a 9-centered being. The pathways between the centers are called channels, and they're from the Kabbalah. These black strips of paper on the diagram represent gates that are being activated by the sun, the planets, the nodes, regardless of whether they're forming a channel. I'm not going to be following the moon in this demonstration because it really does move very fast and activates 3 to 4 gates in a day. And that would really turn this presentation into a several-hour affair. So I'm hoping that some might see this as me trying to know when enough is enough, but I'm not really clear if that's true or not. Anyway, the sun in the 17th hexagram is mapped to an opening in an energy channel called the gate, and it's right up here. This is the 17th gate of opinions, following the ancient law that those who wish to rule must know how to serve. It's located up here in the Ajna center in a collective logic energy path in the understanding circuit called the channel of acceptance, a design of an organized being that connects with gate 62, the gate of details. And I found human design to be amazingly accurate in describing the person, and it really is the primary tool I use when providing readings. We have the following gates activated on March 30th. We have the sun in the 17th. The earth is in the 18th gate. The north node is here in the 50, with the south node here in the 3rd gate. Mercury is up here in the 63, with Venus in the 49. Mars is in the 32, Jupiter in the 39, Saturn up here in the 43, with Uranus in the 21, Neptune in the 37, and Pluto in the 38. Obviously, not every gate activation forms a channel, but this information is really helpful if you know your own human design chart, because some of these transits form channels with potentials in your own personal body graph. And you can get your human design chart by going to jovianarchive.com and click on the button that says Get Your Free Rave Chart, and then just enter in your birth information. And we're going to be looking at the sun's line values daily, because 70% of the neutrinos we receive come through the sun. And as Ra Uru Hu said in Design Perspectives number 56 in his presentation titled Living with the Program with Ra Uru Hu, The Lines of the Day, when talking about these daily shifts of line values, he said we can always take advantage of the themes of the day. So let's get started. March 30th begins with the sun in the 15th gate. It's in the 6th line, so it's up here on the roof of the hexagram in the line of the role model. The 17.6 is the Bodhisattva, perfect following, one with and the same as perfect leading. Exalted is the great nurturer. The nature of this position is always positive. The possibility in understanding the nature of interdependency to express opinions of value to others. Detrimented is a tendency on the perfected path to believe that it is a straight line that ends rather than a circle, where understanding is achieved, the possibility of having the opinion that there is nothing else to learn. And again, this energy starts out as a 6-line energy. You know, thinking about the 6th line, it's the top of the hexagram. It's looking at what's beyond. So, you know, energy like this can be, people get stuck with their head in the clouds and are not aware of things in their immediate environment. So it might be a real lack of focus of what's going on around you at this time. You know, not seeing a car coming or a bill coming or you know, somebody who's just close and you know, it's unaware of where their body is. You know, people crash into each other. So anyway, later on the 30th, the sun moves from the 17 and moves into the 21, where it joins Uranus, and the Earth moves, of course, from the 18 up to the 48, because the Earth and Sun are an axis, and they move in tandem, 180 degrees apart. And this shift happens at 3:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Again, I'm using Eastern Daylight Time, so you want to convert these times to your local time zone. The Sun in the 21st gate of the Huntress, biting through the justified and necessary use of power in overcoming deliberate and persistent interference. In the 21-1, so we're now at the base, the root, the foundation, the investigative line of the hexagram, and this is called warning, the use of force as a last resort. Exalted, it's the willpower and ego to ensure respect. Detrimented, it's a lack of willpower that is forced to ask for respect. And, you know, now that we're moving down into the lower hexagram here, we're moving more into an internal process. The first, second, third line days, or people are really looking more inward. They're more absorbed in their own process. So the theme of the first line a day is fear or anxiety, you know, and these are fears or anxieties that trigger the need to investigate. So, you know, the energy of the day is it's a good day to study, not necessarily to make an action. It's a good day to look into things, not try to make something happen or jump. It's a good day to deal with things that you don't understand and can make sense of something you don't know. Also on the 30th, Mercury moves, and it's leaving the 63, and it moves to the 22 over here in Grace. Let's stick to Grace. We'll fix that later on. Anyway, the point of this is Mercury is the messenger of the gods. It's communication. It's expansion of human consciousness through communication. Not just as words, too. Ra talks about this as communication through music, you know, and so what do you really need to communicate in life? Well, we communicate the message of our design Mercury through the medium of our personality Mercury. So what needs to be communicated in the 22? Grace, you know, because this is the gate of openness. Grace, the quality of behavior best suited for handling mundane and trivial situations. Mercury, of course, it enters into the first line, which is the second-class ticket. Exalted is the ability to accept and enjoy a subordinate position. The emotional awareness to enjoy a subordinate position Detrimented, it's the inevitable humiliation that comes from claiming a first-class seat with a second-class ticket, where the emotional energy challenges the awareness that can result in humiliation socially. And then on the 31st, the sun moves into the second line up here of again the 21st hexagram, this shift happens at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 21-2 is described as might is right, the legitimacy of action in response to flagrant and persistent interference. Exalted, it's a powerful and extreme reaction. Here, the severest action will be most successful. The legitimate rejection of interference on the material plane. Detrimented, it's a tendency to regret severity, no matter how legitimate. The ego uncomfortable with severity. And so now we're talking about second line day. We're up in the line of the hermit. So it colors the day with that kind of hermit energy. So it's waiting for something, waiting for a call. People are just into their own thing. You might not want to schedule a big social event on this because people don't really want to go anywhere. They'd rather just stay home and enjoy their own space. Also on the 31st, Venus moves, and it moves from the 49 to the 30. So in human design, Venus is very powerful and deeply misunderstood, according to Ra. It brings morality, natural law in which we deal with the other and the consequences of the world around us. So what disturbs you on a moral level? Well, your design and personality Venuses tell you about the moral dilemma you're going to be working with in your life. And if you don't act with moral clarity, Ross says that Venus can really be really unkind in its retribution. It's in the 30, so Venus is basically making us aware of the morality of fate, the recognition of feelings, the clinging fire, freedom recognized as an illusion, and limitation accepted as fate. Venus is in the first line of the 30, which is composure. Balance in the face of disorder. Exalted, it's the maximization of limitation in all cases. Stability through feelings, no matter what the situation. Detrimented, it's the ability to maintain composure, but at the expense of progress. Balance through feelings, but unstable, but unable to let them go. And then April 1st, the sun moves into the third line. Again, we're still in the 21st hexagram. This shift happens at just 34 minutes after midnight Eastern Daylight Time. Again, so this shift may be the previous day if you're further west. Which is powerlessness. Where the just are condemned to futile confrontation with the superior forces. Exalted, defeat as a survivable humiliation, often accepted through the abuse of drugs and alcohol, unless one follows one's own material path, the breaking of egos by superiors. Detriment in its total withdrawal, a lack of will for the material path in order to protect our ego. So now we're up here in the third line again. Now we're in the line of the martyr. Trial and error, bonds made and broken. So this is a day to be careful on the roads. Be careful of people in space, swinging doors. Whatever. It's a day when we might have our bonds made, or we might have them broken, or we might have them made and broken in the same day. The third line day is about trial and error and the things that bump into you. So it's a good material day. It's a good day to do business or work on the material plane. But you also have to be really careful because things can go wrong. But these things eventually do lead to discovery. That's the energetic of that third line. And then later on the first, the sun will moves into the fourth line. of the 21st hexagram. This occurs at 11:21 p.m. again Eastern Daylight Time, and the sun is described in the fourth line of the 21 as strategy, careful appraisal of opposing forces to establish a proper response, exalted success in action through clarity, the ego to succeed on the material plane, and the instinct to use willpower effectively in response to conditions. The detriment is a tendency where the right to misjudge the power of one's opponents. The drive when in the right to follow one's ego rather than one's instinct. So now we're moving up into the upper trigram, into the fourth line, and so this is moving from more of an internal process to more of an external process. So people are now looking outward, and the fourth line we've got themes of friendship and companionship, networking. Fourth line days are good for social interaction. So maybe that party you wanted to schedule on the second line day would be better scheduled on the fourth line day. Use your strategy and authority, figure it out. People are more open to networking on a fourth line day, and being friendly and social are more fourth line qualities. And then on the second, the sun moves up into the fifth line, the heretical line of the 21st hexagram. This occurs at 10:10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 21:5 is described as objectivity. The use of force must be based on impartiality and not emotionally motivated. Exalted, it's a principled and legal character that ensures objectivity. The balanced ego, whose willpower is applied objectively. Detrimented, it's the drive for elimination is so powerful that objectivity is related purely to cause and not effect. The ego, whose willpower is applied subjectively. So now we're in the fifth line day. We're up in the heretical line after 10 p.m. Eastern time. And so this is the heretic brings suspicion, but also universalization. So things could leak out, and spread like a virus, whether it's a YouTube video or a Facebook post, but there's also a great deal of suspicion and paranoia in the fifth line. Although I tend to disagree with the paranoia because I've had plenty of experiences where they were out to get me. I don't know. The paranoia aspect, I think, came from someone who wasn't a fifth line, because if you're a fifth line, if you don't meet the expectation, you know it. But sometimes it's worth trying. Fifth line days can impact the nature of relationships. Also, projection and seductions are themes of the fifth line day. And then on the third, the sun moves into the sixth line, into the role model line of the 21st hexagram. This is on at 8:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 21:6 is chaos, where ineffective action leads to disorder. Exalted, the war of attrition, the continuance of legitimate action in the hope of eventually succeeding despite all odds and increased disorder, where the ego is out of touch. The display of willpower that leads to disorder. Detrimented, it's the withdrawal and reliance on inner order in a chaotic situation where the material direction is chaotic. The ego will withdraw and use power to find its own inner order. And, so now we're into sixth line day, where we started the report with a sixth line day. Again, it's about people are looking beyond. They might not be, so much focused on what's happening here. They're thinking about the future. They're thinking about what comes next. They're stuck in their heads, So, people are banging into things that, it kind of has a little bit of third line energy, as they're working as harmonics. So, it's a day where people might not be focused on what's going on around them. Also on the 3rd, Mercury moves from the 22 to the 36. Hard to get right over here, but so anyway, and so Mercury moves pretty quick during these reports when it's moving as it normally would, and Mars, which is retrograde, is going to move from the 32, and it backs into the 57. Keep everybody sticking on there. And so let's talk about Mercury first. Mercury, again, we talked about it, messenger of the gods, about communication, expanding human consciousness, and what we need to communicate in life. So what gets communicated in the 36? Crisis. This is the gate of crisis. This is the darkening of the light, the rule of cycles in which decline is natural, but not an enduring state. And Mercury is in the 36-1. It's resistance. Exalted, it's the energy and determination to persevere in the face of opposition. The emotional power to handle crisis. Detrimented, it's an over-principled resistance that, rather than being selective in resistance, thus less at risk, will maintain normal patterns that incur opposition, a resistance to change that always brings crisis. So, and also on the 3rd, with Mars, it moved retrograde. It moved out of the 32 and backs into the 57. So into the gate of intuitive insight, the gentle, the extraordinary power of clarity. And Mars is detrimented in both the 4th and the 6th line. And Ross spoke about Mars being, an extraordinary yet immature energy resource that lacks refinement, can be subject to outbursts. Mars represents the warrior archetype, and by following our strategy and authority, we slowly refine our design and personality Mars energy from immaturity to wisdom. Because Mars appears to be moving backwards from our perspective here on Earth, it enters in the 6th line of utilization. It detrimented, as we said before, it's detrimented in the 6th line. When clarity points to a problem one is unable, because of circumstances, to solve. A tendency to anger and frustration that provokes inevitable futile action. The possibility that when the intuition cannot solve a problem, the tendency to frustration and anger. And then on the 4th, the Sun moves from the 21 and into the 51. Of course, the 21 stays there because Uranus is still in the 21, but now the Sun is here in the 51st gate. And like I said before, whenever the Sun moves, so does the Earth, and the Earth moves from the 48 to join Mars in the 57. So this shift happens at 7:49 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The Sun in the 51st gate of shock, the arousing, the ability to respond to disorder and shock through recognition and adaptation. The 51-1, so now we're back into the first line as we move into a new hexagram, is a reference. The advantage of previous crisis experience. Exalted is the gift of re-examination that is the foundation of preparedness, the power of the ego conditioned by experience. Detrimented is a tendency to emotional withdrawal after shock, the weakness of the ego in times of challenge. And like I said before, we're moving into the 1st, 2nd, 3rd line. So again, this is going to be more of an inward energy. When you think about these energies This is about the personal process, whereas the upper trigram is about transpersonal process. First line, the theme is fear, anxiety. First line, investigation. What gets triggered. All of a sudden there's something comes in, and the need to do research, the need to look into something, and figure things out. Not a day to take any kind of action, just to, other than to find out the information you need to allow that fear, that anxiety to dissipate. And then on the 5th, the sun moves into the second line. So again, we're up here in the hermit line of the 51. And this is at 6:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 51-2 is described as withdrawal. Exalted is the recognition of the mechanics of shock and the indication when withdrawal is the only logical action. The instinctive withdrawal when the power of the ego is threatened. Detrimented is being too smart for one's own good and rejecting withdrawal in the vain belief that one can outsmart natural forces. The egoism to reject withdrawal in the face of possible defeat. So again, now we're down here, we're into a 6th line, hermit energy. Again, it's people are waiting. They're sitting back. They're seeing what they're called to do. They're called because of their natural talents. But again, so it's not a huge social day. But also on the 5th, Venus moves from the 30th gate into the 55. And this is significant. And I think I'm going to, because what we get with this is this channel gets defined again. And if you've been following these reports, we have had the channel of emoting off and on for months now. And it's back. So here we have it again. What we've got is, well, let's talk about Venus first. We talked about before Venus being about morality according to Ra, which is very different than what Venus is in astrology. So, now we're into the 55. This is the gate of spirit, abundance. Abundance is strictly a question of spirit. Venus is in the first line of the 55. Now, here's something that's very interesting, because Venus in the first line of the 55 is detrimented, so it's that downward-facing triangle. But because we have Jupiter here in the polarity, Jupiter down here in the 39 is actually exalted in the 55 first line. So, it's that upward-facing triangle. So what you see, if you look at the just now chart for this shift, we see what looks like a 6-pointed star representing both that Venus in the 55-1 is both exalted naturally and both detrimented is where it would be naturally, but exalted because of Jupiter's presence. The 55-1 is cooperation. Exalted, it's expansion of activity through cooperation with powerful forces through principled actions that guarantee continued support and engender prosperity. The potential to find spirit through cooperation with powerful forces. Detrimented, the concentration on harmonic relationships with powerful forces that provide for continuity, but not necessarily advancement. The potential to harmonize with powerful forces, not necessarily for the benefit of spirit. And there's a lot of things that are interesting to me. This 55 keeps having things moving through, creating this channel. This is where the mutation will be taking place in 2027. And the 55 here is associated with histidine. But anyway, all that aside, we could go into great detail about that. So anyway, this channel of emoting It's with us until the 11th, which brings kind of a time period where people feel the pressure in the form of an emotional wave. And the best way to deal with this level of sensitivity is to appreciate the lows as well as the highs. Recognize that this is part of being a human and the human experience. It's temporary for those of us who don't have this channel in our birth charts. It can bring lessons that yield wisdom as long as we can stay in the present in moving from hope to despair, back to hope in that cycle. And you can really tap into some great creativity because this is an individual channel. It brings that quality of melancholy, that feeling of being blue, which is great if you can channel into some form of artistic expression, whatever's creative for you. It's also really deeply romantic and acoustic sensitivity, so it's good for listening to music, or certainly talking with a loved one would be favored. So we're continually moving through the hexagrams of the 25, the 17, the 21, and now the 51, which are all associated with the Archangel Michael God's head as we continue to move through the quarter of initiation. So we'll start a new God's head next week. And in this quarter, we're exploring the qualities of the mind as it relates to the form, how the personality relates to the design, being a mind in a body. And, like we talked about before, Archangel Michael was the giver of laws and had the sword of God. And the sword is what separates things into duality, this and that, right and wrong, light and dark, living in a binary world. And this is the core of the mind's program. And I covered all the Archangel Michael in depth 2 weeks ago. So you might want to review that forecast if you missed it. Overall, this rules that Michael brings are really about elevating the mind and subjugating the form. When the mind controls the form, really that's when we're getting into trouble, and that's why we have human design, so that we can follow our strategy and authority to empower the form's intelligence to live the life. So anyway, no matter what the energies that are conditioning you during this week, or that you're working with this week, just remember that this experience is really about being a passenger riding in a vehicle that's being driven by the magnetic monopole. So enjoy the scenery. Let your vehicle take you where you need to go. Every single day we have is a blessing, no matter what the dramas are that are trying to distract us. We're all here just giving the performance of a lifetime on the world stage. I just would encourage you to take some time out to observe the play, observe the movie, as well as act your part by remembering you're a spiritual being that just happens to be having a human experience this time around. Thank you for checking out New World Birth. The next segment of the weekly neutrino forecast will be for April 6th, 2014. It should be available on the 5th, when we're going to continue to look at the influences of the heavenly bodies as they transit the sky and the hexagrams of the I Ching. Next week, I will be discussing the Janus God's head. You can check us out on Facebook or Blogger. If you prefer the text of these things, or YouTube, where all the videos are posted as well. I encourage you to share this information as videos or text as widely as you choose. I'll be discussing the transits of April 2014 and providing some real short 10 to 15 minute human design readings to the participants of the Earth Meets Rebel show on Truth Frequency Radio on Tuesday, April 1st. And this will occur, the show is between 1 and 3 on April 1st. That's again Eastern Daylight Time. I come on around 1:30 after the news. I invite you to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you have any questions about things in this reports, or you wish to schedule a reading, and you've been thinking about getting a reading, please contact me. I would love to provide you a reading during these times of uncertainty. You're going to either need to be able to call me in Maine in the USA, or we can connect on Skype to receive your reading. We're also accepting donations to try and keep these reports freely available. There's a lot of work that goes into this. If you feel like making a donation, feel free to contact me again, and I'll let you know how you can do that, or just get a reading. That way you get something for yourself, and you help support what we're trying to do here. As always, I'm blessed that you've taken the time out to connect with my passion for all these different types of ancient mysteries and their application to our journey during this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste and Lakesh. And as Ra would say, love yourself. And I hope to connect with you again on the radio show, or in a reading, or certainly any future reports. But anyway, thank you. I am extremely blessed that you've taken your time and energy to connect with this, something that I'm just so passionate about. Peace, everybody.